We were reading, I think, chapter 2, right? Chapter 2 and verse number 9. So verse number 9 is basically talking about uh, the reasons by which you should not have any fear to the Mahayana teaching. And in this case, the verse number 9 is saying that the 100,000 verses Wisdom Perfection Sutra, that definitely is the Mahayana teaching. Because if there is a Mahayana teaching, then you won't find any Mahayana teaching other than texts like this. And this 100,000 Wisdom Perfection Sutra, which in Tibetan we call Bum, that of course is not a source for having fear. So there's no need for you to have fear. That's what he says in verse number 9. And then he says, then the opponent, he refuses by this by saying that no. The vehicle, the teachings of the Sarvakas and Patika Buddhas, they are the Mahayana. They are the Mahayana teaching. So the opponent says like that. And then this is repeated by saying that in that case, then you have to say that there is no other Mahayana teaching, other than the Sarvaka and Patyaka Buddha teachings. Because you are saying that the Sarvaka and Patyaka Buddha vehicle itself is the Mahayana teaching. That's what you are saying. But if you say that this is right, if you say this is right, then this is not correct, because both the vehicle or the teachings of the Sarvaka and Patyaka Buddha and Mahayana teachings, they came at the same time. Okay? They came at the same time. And in the next line, it says, it poses multifarious teachings. That means, now if you look at the Mahayana teachings, then you will see that this Mahayana teachings is not only giving the teaching on emptiness, but also gives many other multifarious teachings, which is related to accumulating merit. Poses multifarious teachings. And also, in the case of the teaching on emptiness, it teaches emptiness in many ways, by different levels: emptiness, suchness, ultimate end. So through many different words and ways, it teaches emptiness also. So it gives multifarious teachings and teaches in many ways. And that process of teaching in many ways is something that they teach constantly. Then as far as the question by the opponent saying that Mahayana is a nihilistic teaching, this is answered in the third line, which says, it is not as it is taught. That means you cannot accept it literally, because there are interpretative teachings which you need to interpret and understand the meaning behind. So therefore, this teaching where it says all phenomena do not exist at all, then that should not be taken at its face value. It has a very deeper, profound meaning, and you have to interpret it, because the thought of the Buddha is very, very profound. The Bhagavan's thought is very profound. So it has to be understood through the interpretive teaching and also through the ultimate teaching. So therefore, you should not develop this fear. The fourth line is saying, if the learned ones properly analyze his teaching, will not have fear. So that means if you are having fear, it means you have not studied the Mahayana teaching properly. And therefore, you have not understood the thought of the Buddha properly. If you study it properly and properly understand the interpretation by the learned ones, then you will have no fear with this teaching. So that is what he said in verse number 9. Verse number 10. And also, from the point of view of valid cognition, be it direct perception or inferential cognition, if you try to understand it through direct perception and inferential valid cognition, then again you will find that Mahayana teaching is not something that you should be discarding. This is what is said in verse number 10. Because if you ask a question, okay, in that case, then if the teaching is very profound and Buddha's thoughts are very profound, then how can we fathom or understand this profound teaching? If such a question is asked, then it is basically saying this has to be understood through the threefold process of listening, thinking, and meditation. Especially when you relate it related to the various spiritual grounds. So here first through listening, proper listening, proper mental engagement arises. So that means when you analyze the meaning of the Mahayana teaching, then during the first path of accumulation, you should engage in extensive hearing. And through this extensive engagement in hearing, then in the later part of the path of accumulation, and also during the second part, the path of application, then you will develop this proper mental engagement towards shunyata. From there, you will develop wisdom that comes through thinking. And likewise, you will also develop this wisdom through meditation in the worldly level. And when you engage in this mental engagement properly, from proper mental engagement arises the primordial wisdom. That means when you properly engage your mind in it, then gradually you will be able to see the correct meaning, which means emptiness, directly during the path of seeing, third path. The path of seeing is called path of seeing because then you are able to see emptiness directly. Even during the path of, the second path of accumulation, path of preparation, you may see emptiness, but not directly. You see it through a generic image, through a medium. But then through this proper process of mental engagement, continuous mental engagement, you'll be able to directly see it when you achieve the path of seeing. That's the meaning. From proper mental engagement arises the primordial wisdom that has correct meaning as its object. The correct meaning as its object means the correct meaning here is emptiness. You're able to see it directly. And when you further make your mind habituated with it, then you are able to get liberated from those objects that must be negated. So from that, dharma is obtained. Dharma means the quality. Dharma here means quality of being liberated from the object of engagement is actualized. After you continuously make your mind habituated when you have seen emptiness directly. And when you achieve that state of being liberated from the object of engagement, then you are able to develop that primordial wisdom and intelligence by which you can say, okay, now I have achieved this state, remove this object of negation, and so forth. So that mind is called, in the case if this individual cognition is absent, how will there be ascertainment? So this is rebuttal. This is a response to the opponent, because the opponent is saying, how would you know the Mahayana teaching is the word of the Buddha? Then they immediately say, oh, it is known by the individual primordial wisdom of the individual cognition. They do not talk about the systematic, orderly process of hearing, thinking, meditation. They straightway say, oh, it is, realized by that individual cognition, primordial wisdom. So this is refuted here by saying that, no, you can't develop such a primordial, individual cognition straight away. You need to go through this process of listening, contemplation, meditation in all the stages of the path. So that is what he's saying. In the case, if this individual cognition is absent, this individual cognition which came through the proper process of listening, contemplation, and wisdom, if that is absent, then how will you have that definite understanding, ascertainment of emptiness? So that is what one's own side is refuting the opponent's viewpoint. Verse number 11. Now again, if the opponent is saying, yeah, but I have fear to the Mahayana teaching because I do not know it. It has some point, because normally when we develop fear, because when we don't know something, then we have fear. So he's saying, I have fear because I don't know the Mahayana teaching. Then this is refuted by saying that simply because of the fact that you do not know it, it should not be reason to develop fear and discard the Mahayana teaching. I do not know, therefore I fear. Number one, they are saying. Then second is saying, the Buddhas do not know the profound. Now in the first case, if you do not have a proper Mahayana spiritual teacher and have not accumulated extensive merit, see again this point is coming here. Last time we discussed about whether we need to accumulate extensive merit to realize emptiness. So here also it's saying that when you have not properly followed the Mahayana spiritual teacher and also do not have the backing and the support of having accumulated extensive merit, and then of course you do not realize the meaning of the Mahayana teaching, especially the teaching on emptiness. So therefore, instead of developing fear and discarding the Mahayana teaching, you should now make effort. So that is what he's asking us. For students like us also, he's basically saying, if you don't know, then ask question, find good teachers, study, then you will know. Don't just say that I do not know, I have fear. I once met a quite intelligent person. We were traveling together, a Tibetan. He said, Lhakdor, I don't believe in Tantra. Then I said, have you read Tantra? Do you know Tantra? Then he was laughing. Then I said, it's presumptuous to say that you don't like Tantra, having no knowledge at all. There must be a reason why you don't like. So you cannot simply, based on your whims, you cannot, based on your likes and dislikes, you cannot, discard something right away. Okay? So that's what he's saying. So as His Holiness the Dalai Lama is always saying, for us also it is really important to study with a qualified teacher and read good books, not all kind of books, especially when you talk about, the profound view of emptiness. It is important to read books like the one written by Nagarjuna, written by Tsongkhapa and so forth, which are really reliable and people who have already realized emptiness. Otherwise, ordinary people can also, give a description, but it can be wrong. It can be wrong. Because in the Buddhist philosophical text, it said, what is emptiness? Emptiness is merely the absence, the mere negation of the object of negation, the mere absence of object of negation. It's not easy to understand. So mere absence of object of negation means that simply absence of negation of object of negation means object of negation is independent inherent existence. Right? So say we are not affirming anything. That's why some of the text it says, in emptiness there is nothing to posit, nothing to eliminate. It is simply letting your mind stay on the reality as it is. So there are tricky points like that, which should be understood properly. The second point, if he says, even the Buddhas do not know the profound. So therefore, since the Buddha himself do not know the profound, how can he teach the Mahayana teaching? So the Mahayana text is not taught by Buddha. That's what the opponents again say. Even these days, there are people who say that Mahayana teachings are not taught by the Buddha. These are later inventions. And some say its origin in Hinduism. Right? So here it is important not only to discriminate Mahayana teaching, but the complete teaching of the Buddha. As we discussed a little bit last time, that at the time of the Buddha there was no writing. Even in the case of the Pali tradition, which came much earlier, even those teachings, when Buddha taught, he is said to have taught in 4 different languages prevailing at that time. So Pali was one important language, right? So even at the Buddha's time, there was no writing. So how all these things are preserved? So such kind of questions we can always ask. So there's no reason to discriminate Mahayana teaching. And especially when it comes to the tantric teaching, then of course people say this is not a Buddha's teaching, this is Hinduism, which talks about all these tantric cults, men, women union, and all those things, you see. Right? So there are questions like that. So this question that is raised here is not something, happening only at that time. Even today, there are people who ask such questions. So now, when the opponent says that the profound Mahayana teaching is not even, realized by Buddha, so he cannot teach, this is answered by saying, when you talk about the completely enlightened Buddha, he is somebody who has completely eliminated ignorance and who has developed this primordial, non-conceptual wisdom towards all phenomena. So therefore, he definitely knows the most profound. So therefore, likewise, in our case also, if we make effort in the Mahayana path, we can also reach that state of Buddhahood and realize that profound path. Then again, the opponent is trying to rebut this by saying, why the profound is not the object of the logicians? You will remember this point has been raised earlier by saying that, simply through theoretical knowledge, simply by asking some dry intellectual, reasonings, one will be able to understand the Mahayana teaching, profound Mahayana teaching, especially the teaching on emptiness. That's why again we raised this question last time, whether the scientists can, intelligent scientists can realize emptiness or not. So this is again similar thing. So here also he is saying that what reason the logicians, through using their logic and reasoning, cannot understand this. So if you develop, lose your faith or develop some kind of fear by saying that why this cannot be an object of understanding by using logic and reason. So this is answered by saying, as we already said, that the Mahayana teaching is very, very profound. It cannot be understood simply by reasoning. So therefore, if you really want to understand this profound Mahayana teaching, then you should not rely only on dry intellectual knowledge, but you should make effort and through a correct process of the path, realize it. Even in terms of emptiness, it is said that, for example, there is a gradual process. For example, there's a beautiful line taught by Changcha Rolvedorji, I think. Sorry. How to say? One scholar, I forgot the name. So in that beautiful verse, he says, all the sufferings that we are encountering in this samsara, they arise or created by the enemy, self-grasping. So therefore, we should all make effort to uproot that self-grasping, the enemy. However, before you realize, now this is the point I'm making. However, before you understand, realize that profound, subtle meaning of emptiness, you better start from a little bit easier topics like impermanence in general. Impermanence also, we have subtle impermanence, grosser impermanence. Start from the grosser impermanence. Now, when we talk about grosser impermanence, for example, in your case, and then he gives example how difficult it is to understand the profound. He gives an example by saying, now in terms of even understanding the grosser level of impermanence, we all do see young and old people die in front of our eyes. Even after that, does it ever occur to you that it may be next time your turn, that you will also die? You simply keep on counting, oh, that person died, this young boy died, that young girl died, that old man died. You keep on counting. You hardly, it occurs to you that you will die. A clear indication that you do not develop such a conviction of the death and impermanence in you. Therefore, because you continue in the same old way, not able to make special effort in your spiritual practice, not being able to transform your mind and things like that. So therefore, the suggestion is start from very grosser level of impermanence, then subtle level of impermanence, and so forth. Then gradually into the subtle meaning of shunyata. That is what is being suggested. Okay. Now again, another question is asked. This question that's interesting actually. Another question is by saying that why you can get liberated only by realizing emptiness, not by using logic. Makes sense because you can use logic and understand what is right, what is wrong, and then through that you might get liberated. So why is it necessary that you get liberated only by knowing emptiness? This is a question that is being asked. So he's saying that there is no reason. There is no reason that you don't get liberated just by using logic and you have to realize emptiness. There's not much reason. But the Mahayanas are very adamant and they keep on saying this. So therefore we are scared. It's almost saying that you Mahayanists are becoming fanatics. Almost saying like that. This is answered by saying, no, you should not develop fear in that way, because it is by realization of emptiness that the seed of afflictive emotions, which produces suffering, can be eliminated. Not just by using logic, not without meditation. This is almost like talking about the difference between getting information, knowledge, and wisdom. Knowledge is built on information, not all kind of information, but proper information. And then from knowledge, when you properly use with a tinge of moral practice, when you use that knowledge in the proper way, then it becomes wisdom. So thereby you can see, just by using logic, you can't eliminate the root cause of the problem. So this is again another very interesting point. When you talk about wisdom, it involves very strong presence of morality and ethics. One of the common examples given in the case of information, knowledge, and wisdom is information is like reading a whole library regarding how to build a ship. Knowledge is having the capacity to build a ship. It's a big progress. But it is only wisdom that will help you how best you can use that ship. Having built that ship, if you use that ship to transfer weapons and to destroy people, then there's no wisdom there. So properly use your knowledge with a sense of responsibility. That then becomes a wisdom. So again, this is also a little bit pointing towards the need to have accumulation of merit for realizing emptiness. Okay. So I do not know, number one, the Buddhas do not know the profound, why the profound is not the object of logicians, why the knowers of the profound, meaning knowers of emptiness, are liberated. I have answered all this. Hence, what is said is not a field worthy of fear. So having answered all the questions raised by the opponent, then it's concluded by saying, therefore, there is no need for you to develop fear, because your fears are based on groundless thinking. Now, again, if the opponent means not necessarily there is an opponent, but this is how we think also. In verse number 12, it says that, for example, if you say that because I don't like Mahayana teaching, therefore Mahayana is not a good thing. That's what we say. Normally we decide based on our likes and dislikes. So finally he says, because I don't like Mahayana teaching, therefore Mahayana is not a good thing. So this is answered by saying, because your interest is inferior, and your mental disposition is also inferior. That means your mental disposition is also inferior. It means here we are talking about the mind-only school, philosophy. So meaning that the positive imprints that is normally left on the foundation of consciousness, that is also weak and inferior. And then surrounded totally by inferior friends, because of this, and your lack of interest proves that this teaching is profound, vast, and well taught Dharma. Because what is profound, what is vast, and what is well taught is not understood by people who are, whose minds inferior, and whose study is weak, and who are surrounded by misguided people. then you can't understand these things. So that itself establishes or proves that the Mahayana teaching is a profound teaching. What's number 13? What's number 13 is saying that the other reasons by which one discards the Mahayana teaching is either lack of understanding, lack of realization, or misconception, or through doubt. Now, in the case of lack of understanding, in your case, you're opposing Mahayana teaching because you have not properly listened to the Mahayana teaching. And that should not be the ground for you to discard Mahayana teaching. Because one who, having listened and achieved intelligence, that means the Sarvakas, those who follow the Sarvakayana teaching, they have also did some listening. And then, but they did not listen to the Mahayana teaching. They listened to their own Hinayana or Sarvakayana teaching. And thereby they develop some realization of that vehicle. And in that sense, they have some intelligence. One who having listened and achieved some intelligence. And because of this, completely ignores or looks down or denigrates listening to the Mahayana teaching. And it happens. It happens. People who have no knowledge at all, like small kids, it's easy to teach them. But people who have a little bit of knowledge, then they get puffed up thinking that this is everything that is there in the world. So therefore, great thinkers like Einstein and many great thinkers, they say one of the most important criteria to say that you are an intelligent person is to acknowledge that you know nothing. To acknowledge that I know nothing, there's so much to know, then there is hope for you to make progress. Right? So otherwise, in the case of this Sarvakayana followers, because you have some kind of intelligence, followed your own set of teachings, so therefore you are affronting or denigrating, listening to the Mahayana teachings. Completely ignores. Leaves behind immeasurable aspects. Immeasurable aspect means, as we already discussed, if you look at the contents or subject matters of the Mahayana teaching, it is vast varieties of teaching to best serve the varied mental dispositions of sentient beings. But in your case, because of your ignorance, you are simply saying Mahayana teaching is no teaching of the Buddha. So therefore, instead of denigrating the Mahayana teaching, you should study, listen to the teaching, and will understand it. Leaves behind immeasurable aspect. Leaves behind immeasurable aspect means, if it's a particular teaching which has so many varieties of ways and means to help sentient beings with wide variety of dispositions, it's a great teaching. It's a skillful teaching. Now, if you discard that and then force one way of thinking to everybody, then you have lost much. So therefore, how are you so convinced with your ignorance? Meaning that don't quickly, when we read the scriptures, very often they say, don't be hasty in making a conclusion. So this is basically what he's telling the opponents. Don't make hasty conclusion because you have some knowledge of your particular field. But there are vast varieties of subject matters that is taught in the Mahayana teaching to best serve people or sentient beings. Therefore, study. Okay? So here we also had this line saying that, sorry, okay, now let us read verse number 14. Verse number 14, actually we have discussed a little bit earlier. Verse number 14 is saying that I am, so actually this subsequent verses are a more kind of wider explanation of what is briefly said right in the beginning. Okay, so it looks like a little bit repetition, but it's not repetition. So this verse number 14 is saying that I don't like Mahayana teaching, or I have fear to the Mahayana teaching because it's a nihilistic teaching. So this is answered by saying, when the meaning is realized literally, not being able to interpret and understand the profound meaning behind, if you simply follow the literal meaning, then you will have a lot of problems. When Buddha gave the teaching, he gave two levels of teaching, interpretative teaching and ultimate teaching. He gave interpretative teaching because he cannot right away explain the most profound to those people whose mind is not prepared. Right? For example, if your aim is to, educate somebody and make somebody do his doctorate or PhD, but he has to start from kindergarten. You cannot right away teach the PhD subjects to the kindergarten student, right? But the aim is to make him a PhD student or doctor, but it is to be gradual, right? So therefore, there are many who will not be able to digest. For example, let me tell you this story of Ajat Shatru, who killed his father and was in deep shock, depression. Then his friends suggested that the only person who can take you away from this depression and shock is Buddha. So you go and see him. So Ajat Shatru goes to Buddha and confesses that he did this grave mistake of killing the father. Then Buddha said, "Oh, it's okay, no problem. Father and mother are to be killed." So this is a classic example of interpretive teaching, a skillful way of teaching. He said, "No problem, father and mother to be killed." Because he has so much trust to the Buddha, therefore he took it literally and thought, okay, then okay. Because after having thought this is okay, he gradually came back to his senses. He was able to come over with his depression. Then when he was out of depression, out of shock, his senses are clear. Then the Buddha said, now look, when I said father and mother are to be killed, I'm not talking about the physical father and mother, but the father, ignorance, and mother, negative action. They produces the rest of the links of dependent origination, or in other words, all other negative deeds and sufferings. So therefore, they are like father and mother. So if you understand that, remove ignorance, through that way you can also purify all your negative deeds, including your negative deed of having killed your father. Right? So for such people, you cannot straight away teach the profound meaning. It is to be skillful. Okay? So that's why he gave this interpretive teaching. So therefore, when the meaning is realized, so if you are unable to do that, and if you take the face value, and when the meaning is realized literally, without understanding the background meaning, the profound meaning, one will become conceited, one will become arrogant, proud, think you understand it literally, then say, yes, I know it. I know it. This is what the Buddha said. Okay? And your intelligence will degenerate. Corruption of wisdom will take place. Hence, even the well-taught is abandoned. One will be lost and anger will obscure. So So therefore, when you take it literally, wrongly, then you may start thinking that whatever I have realized should be true, and then you develop this arrogance. And therefore, because of this arrogance, you will not seek advice or guidance from other teachers. Therefore, your intelligence will degenerate. Okay? And you will not be able to improve your wisdom and intelligence. And because of this, even the well-taught Mahayana teaching will be regarded as not the word of the Buddha, and you will discard it. And as a result, you will be lost. That means you will fall into negative state of existence. Because you have accumulated this heavy obscuration of developing anger towards the profound Mahayana teaching. Anger will obscure. That means you develop this strong anger towards the Mahayana teaching, and that will then accumulate that obscuration. So therefore, developing hatred to the profound teaching is said to be one of the heaviest negative deeds, heavier than even killing one's parents and things like that. Because this understanding the profound ultimate reality is a way and a means to eliminate all kind of negative deeds, including ignorance itself. But if you develop hatred or disliking towards that, then when you commit other negative deeds, there is no cure. Therefore, it is said that by misperceiving emptiness, those with small intelligence will be lost. Just like mishandling a snake. If you don't know how to catch a snake properly, then the snake will bite you and kill you. Right? So therefore, those with small intelligence will be lost by misperceiving emptiness. Means if you do not, rely on a proper qualified teacher, do not read the correct text or things like that, then you will fall into nihilism. There are people who have written books. I've seen books of so-called scholars who are saying that Mahayana is a nihilistic philosophy. Because in the Mahayana text, when you literally read, there are so many no, like Heart Sutra, no ear, no nose, nothing. Right? But in a way, it is good, even if you take it literally, but still, if you are able to interpret it nicely, it will be good. We are not only, in the Heart Sutra, we are not only saying no ear, no nose, no mouth. You can also add other words by saying no depression, no illness, no suffering. And then it can be interpreted. Suffering also doesn't have inherent existence. Illness also doesn't have inherent existence. Things like that. Okay? Oh yeah. Isn't it? The next, verse number 15 is saying, a mental fault like anger by nature is pernicious. I mean, very sinful. By nature, it's very sinful. It is improper even to an improper form. For example, improper even to an improper form means that even if you get angry towards a stone, inanimate object, or a tree, even that is very destructive. This being the case, what need is there to talk about the great fault that arises by developing this hatred towards the profound teaching? If you're not so sure, don't make any judgment. And instead develop a questioning mind. So therefore, what he's saying is, even if you're unable to develop respect and veneration to the Mahayana teaching, but at least you should take a neutral stand. And that is important, not only with the Mahayana teaching, but other people also. We are very quick in making judgment about other people, right? So it's almost like what his Holiness is saying. If it is possible for you to help, then help. If you are unable to help, refrain from harming. Almost like that. If you are able to develop respect, develop respect. If you are unable to develop respect, at least maintain a neutral stand. Don't make hasty conclusions about anything when you are not so sure. Because if you maintain that neutral stand, you will not commit negative deeds. Even though it may not be a virtuous thing, but at least it is not a non-virtuous thing. Therefore, discard disliking or hatred towards the Mahayana teaching. Especially if you are somebody who wants to achieve a great result, then you need to be very careful. This is a very important advice. Because especially in the case of the practitioner of the Mahayana teaching, we need to see all sentient beings having the seed of the Buddha, seed to become Buddha. All sentient beings have the Buddha nature. In the very beginning of the entering the middle way, there is a line which says, pay homage to the waxing moon, not the fully developed moon. Meaning that pay more homage to the bodhisattvas than the Buddhas. Buddha is understandable, he is already enlightened. But the bodhisattvas are seeds. Ordinarily also, when we plant something, when we sow a seed, then it is important to take more care of that seed than the plant already grown. Because the already grown tree, even if you don't take care, it will survive to a great extent. But the seed must be nurtured, must be properly taken care of. Okay? There is no need to talk about in relation to a doubtful dharma. Hence, it is better to leave it in equanimity or take a neutral stand, and it will be free of the fault. So this completes the second chapter, dealing with proving Mahayana is the correct teaching from the Mahayana Sutra Alamkara. Okay. The call is. There's already 6:37 or few more minutes. Huh? Now the next third chapter is on taking refuge. Is on taking refuge. Having discussed the authenticity of the Mahayana teaching, now in the Mahayana kind of lineage or practice, there are 4 things which are crucial. First, the person, practitioner of the Mahayana teaching, should have proper lineage. In other words, the person should be fortunate one, having that, seed or lineage to practice it. Then as a basis for your practice, there should be generation of bodhicitta. And as a basis for quick enlightenment, there should be the bodhisattva deeds, the practice of 6 perfections, 10 perfections, and so forth. And then as a result, there will be perfect fruit because of having led such a proper conduct of a bodhisattva. The first one, in order to, if you're not somebody who already has that proper lineage, Then in order to make yourself suitable for Mahayana practice, you should undertake this process of taking refuge. Now with this process of taking refuge, there are many things to explain. I'm afraid we will not be able to explain everything. But for the sake of easier understanding, many of these teachings, Mahayana teachings or Buddhist teachings, they're actually common sense teachings. When explained, we should be able to relate it to our common experience. So in the case of taking refuge also, it's not actually something unique or peculiar to the Buddhist teaching or Buddhist practitioners. It's a human tendency to take refuge in something when you are in trouble. Long ago, when men lived in the cave, they're actually taking refuge in the cave. They don't know how to construct a house and things like that. Right? Then ordinarily also, if it is raining, we take refuge in raincoat or umbrella. At 12 o'clock, we take refuge in our lunch. Right? So therefore, we have this nature of seeking protection or taking refuge in someone who is more capable, who has the capacity to protect us. So with that background, now when we talk about taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we are taking refuge to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha not because we are in short supply of money or short supply of food or being chased by tiger and lion, things like that. But we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha because we have a major problem, major fear. So what is that fear? Fear of being stuck in samsara, fear of being tormented by negative emotions. It's a big kind of malady or illness. So Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are the only objects of refuge who can help us. Help us not in the sense of a creator God to whom you just pray and then boom, there's enlightenment or redeemed from your difficulties. That's not what the Buddhists believe. So here the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, again a beautiful explanation. Just as when we physically get sick, we take refuge in the physician, doctor. It's important, very important. Doctor is very important. But doctor alone is not enough. Let us say you are not only sick, but very sick. Then in that case, you need somebody to look after you. It may be a nurse, it may be a compounder, it may be your brother, sister, somebody to look after you because you are not only sick, but very sick, bedridden. And of course, you need medicine. Three things are needed. Even if you met a very good doctor, but do not take the medicine, then you cannot be cured. Even if you have a good doctor, good medicine, but nobody supporting you, nobody cooking for you, nobody changing your clothes, and things like that, again, you are in big trouble. You need these three things when you're critically ill. So similarly, we are all mentally critically ill by anger, illness of anger, illness of attachment, hatred, discrimination. So many negative emotions. We are sick from so many negative emotions. So the way to cure these illnesses of negative emotions is taught by the Buddha. So Buddha is like the physician who had given the teaching. His teaching is like the medicine. Then our sanghas, other spiritual brothers and sisters, are like nurses and compounders. In their absence, for example, if you are in a place where you are the only person who has some inkling of interest or idea about Buddha Dharma, and the rest of people are like either discard such teaching or even against such teaching, then it will be an uphill task for you to do the practice. But when you are surrounded by encouraging sanghas, supporting community, it's much easier. So sangha is very important. They are good examples. So therefore, taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha is very important. Buddha basically means somebody who is completely enlightened, who has removed all the faults, all the obscurations, all the sufferings, and who is omniscient in the sense of knowing everything. Everything primarily means what to discard and what to adopt. It's not so much about whether the Buddha's mind knows each and every, individual grains on the Ganges plain or the amount of dust that's on this earth. He may or may not know that, but his being omniscient is not so much with regard to that. His being omniscient means he knows what to adopt and what to discard. And I'm not just saying that. There is a quotation by Dignath who said, somebody knowing the number of insects is not so relevant to my spiritual practice. But somebody who knows what to adopt and what is to discard, I will take that person as my teacher, as my guide. And he continues by saying, one who teaches the means and method to adopt certain things and to discard certain things, that is a valid teacher. Not everybody who knows this and that. And in fact, he says, gives an example by saying, it is simply because somebody knows something at a far distance, which you don't know, because of that knower is great, then better you have eagle or hawk as your teacher, because they also have a very penetrating, sharp, eye, which is able to see much, much far than us. So you invite these birds and take them as your teacher, right? So we do say Buddha is omniscient, but that should be understood in the proper context, not so much about whether it's able to count all the grains of the sand or dust, things like that. Okay. And then what really becomes the antidote to our negative emotions is the Dharma itself, the actual refuge. So Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, we should take refuge in that. People normally ask, how should I become a Buddhist? I always advise them, you should become a Buddhist by first studying and learning about Buddha's teaching and see its relevance in your life, correctness in your life. And through that way, if you're convinced that this path is good, this path is useful, then you can follow it. So you have already become a Buddhist, at least from my viewpoint. Yes, we do have this practice of ceremonially taking the refuge in front of a teacher. That is good. Sometimes it helps you to remember that occasion and to say that I become a Buddhist in front of such and such a person. But we should not lay too much emphasis on ceremony. It's basically the most important thing is your personal decision and conviction based on understanding. So it should not become like baptizing. You sprinkle some water on your head and then you become somebody. Not so much about that. Right? Okay. Okay, so we stop here.
Yes, Geshe-la, thank you very much. So shall we ask some questions, right?
Yeah.
So the first question is from Marina, and she says, at the previous session, there was a question about non-conceptual thinking. And you gave an example with the reflection of the moon in the lake. But the water in the lake is ethically neutral. It is said that the state of the Buddha is not ethically neutral. How can one be ethical without concepts. Since the Buddha is not ethically neutral, then he distinguishes good from evil. And how is it possible to distinguish good from evil without concepts?
Non-conceptually, he will understand it. What is important is not so much about whether the knower is conception or non-conception. The question is knowing. So for knowing, it's not necessary that it should be always conceptual. So non-conceptually, Buddha knows it. And for knowing it, he doesn't have to make an effort. That's why I give you the example of reflection in the moon on a mirror. The mirror, what you said is correct. The mirror does not have a motivation to say that I will reflect this or reflect that. But so long as the mirror is clean, not covered by dust, then whatever comes within its focus, it will be reflected. So similar is the mind of the Buddha. Whatever comes within its purview, it knows it. Right? Okay.
Yes, Geshe, thank you very much. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit slow at times because I have to read the questions and listen to your answers and try to digest everything. Sorry for that. The next question is from Dinara. And the question is, how can we remove specific negative emotions with the awareness or realization of emptiness, with the realization of emptiness? For example, you can do an analysis and understand that the pain is due to some conditions, and it is impermanent, and it does not exist intrinsically by itself, right, on its own side. You can understand it logically, but on the physical level, the pain and suffering, the emotion, they remain. And this is something real and painful. How do we connect this logical understanding and the perception, our perception or emotions?
So that's why we make a distinction between existence and independent existence. What we are refuting is independent existence. We are not refuting existence. So pain is there. We are not saying there is no pain. We are saying there is pain. Yes, therefore you experience pain. It's there. But with understanding that the pain is there, but there is no independently existing pain, with that understanding, it will help reduce your pain. For example, let me give you an example. For example, if you are very obsessed with something, let us say the Mercedes car, okay, very obsessed. Not only you thought this is existing, but existing independently. When you see that car existing independently, then there is more obsession. But when you see it having no independent existence, that is simply an assemblage of iron sheets or whatever, right? Just like toys for a small kid. Cars are bigger toys for us grown-up people, but basically it is a toy assembled together. So when you see that, then with that seeing, you will never say my car is not there. You are simply saying the car is there, but it is not there as I thought. That will help you reduce your grasping to it, because you are now seeing the essencelessness of that object. It's only something that you can use, but not dependable for a long time. Okay.
So, just would like to clarify for myself. Does it mean that we experience pain, right?
Yes.
But when we see it as not being something permanent, independent, it can become like less painful, or
absolutely,
at the physical level.
Physical level also, yes, because the intensity of your experience on the physical level is not only the physical level, but it is dependent on how the mind sees it. Okay, if you see two persons, more or less similar faces, but one, let us say, your very close friend, another person, the so-called your enemy. Physically, they're same, but because your mind, how you see it, there's a huge difference in how you react to these two people. For one, you have so much joy and happiness and liking, you know. For another, you have rejection, disliking, you see. Okay.
Thank you very much. I think that we will take the question from Sahili. Please unmute yourself.
Venerable Geshe Lhakdor. One thing I must say, I have two questions. And the more I listen to the teaching, more read books, the more I understand how stupid I am. How stupid I am, I realize every day. So the thing is, there is something I think I misunderstood and misinterpret. That we always listen that happiness is lies inside. We don't need to wait for something to happen to be happy. And at the same moment, when I observe that happiness is all, I mean, doesn't exist as its own. It depends on many other factors, like the small things even in life, like birds, trees, everything I'm watching. So how these two things are, I mean, going in the same direction. In one hand, I'm saying that happiness lies inside, and another thing I can understand that.
Yeah. So what I was saying all along was happiness is primarily dependent on the mind. Primarily. I did not disqualify the involvement of other things. So other external situations, conditions also play a role because we live in a world of interdependent origination. Of course, right? Nothing can arise just by one cause, one condition. But it's primarily your mind.
Okay. That's something I misunderstood. And the second thing is like about taking refuge. You also mentioned about the factor of fear, that fear of this suffering. But why it is this even the in the book I read? It was there that the factor of fear. But why can't it be like the admiration or love for the particular teaching or particular philosophy? Is it always like you should have fear for taking refuge? Why can't it be the admiration for that teaching?
Fear, there are different types of fear.
Okay.
Many of the fears that we experience are unfounded fear. So such fears are, we do get those fears, but they're unfounded and useless. For example, if you are flying in an aeroplane, I have that experience. Suddenly there is a big turbulence. You develop fear. You even hold tightly, to your seats. But just by doing that, if the plane is going to crash, it will crash. Just by your holding it on the chair will not help you, right? So it is useless fear. But if a mad dog is chasing you, then it's sensible and good to have fear. Otherwise, you will stay there and dog will bite you. So it is good to have fear and run away.
Okay.
That's one thing. Then second, to your question, if you only develop admiration, yes, it's good. You develop this admiration, but that will not be very powerful to get liberated. You need to get liberated from samsara. Not only you should develop admiration to the compassion, love, and qualities of the Buddha, but you should also see where are you stuck. कहाँ आप फंस गया है? So you need to make a plan to run away from that place where you are having problem. So in fact, there is a beautiful verse from Earlier there was 400 verses, where he says, a person who has no fear in the samsara will never develop veneration and respect to the nirvana. And then he gives a beautiful example by saying, if it is a person who is very happy with his present home, why should he think about moving to some other place? It's only when he has a problem in the family, in the home, things like that, then he thinks about going somewhere else. Right? So it's only by seeing the limitations, the shortcomings and the problems of the samsara, then you think about moving to nirvana. Okay?
Okay. I got my answer. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Geshe. The next question is from Sergey. Sergey asks to explain, to give an example from our life of the next sentence. Nothing can be established and nothing can be eliminated in the emptiness.
If you ask me to explain space, I think I explained this a little bit earlier. When we talk about space, we are not negating anything. We are not establishing anything. We are simply talking about the state as it is. That's the meaning. You are not refuting something and in its place you are establishing something. It's not like that. So that's the meaning. So when we say emptiness, it means the mere absence of inherent existence. The mere absence. And apart from this mere absence, you are not establishing or proving, affirming anything. So therefore it is called non-affirming negative. Okay.
Thank you. And also Marina, who asked the first question about the conceptions, the concepts, she would like to clarify, are concepts obstacle to realizing emptiness or
Yes.
ultimate reality?
Yes, to realize emptiness directly is an obstacle. But otherwise, as I mentioned earlier, during the second path of preparation, you realize emptiness conceptually through a generic image, through a medium. You are not able to see it directly. So in order to see it directly, like your eye seeing a particular object in front of you, to reach that state, you need to get rid of the conception. Okay.
Thank you very much, Geshe. And then the next question is from Natalia. She asks, what is the best mantra to recite to protect oneself against harmful magical influences or against a curse, for example?
Number one, with the mantra, I think you can recite Heart Sutra mantra. Tayata gati gati pargati parsamgati buddhi swaha. Or you can recite Om Tare Tu Tare Ture Swaha, Tara mantra. Okay. Of course, all mantras work, but these mantras are said to be especially powerful because the Heart Sutra mantra, as we already discussed, is really, removing ignorance, the root cause of all problems. Right? And then the Tara mantra, Tara is said to be the emanation of sublime activity, like wind symbolizes wind energy. So she's quick, in giving protection. That's what is said. Okay, but basically, I think as Milarepa said, the so-called ghost, evil forces, these are basically mental fabrications, comes out of doubt or certain, conditions within one's psychophysical aggregate. I always jokingly tell people, there are no ghosts and evil forces unemployed and waiting to harm us. Host of negative, ghosts is standing there in line, trying to harm us. There's no such thing. Basically, it is our mental conception. And Milarepa explains this repeatedly. Whenever he has developed such conception, such fear, he says, this is all my mind. And then he clarifies those problems. Okay. And then another way, for some people, it is also sometimes helpful when you go to bed and sleep. Imagine that you are putting your head on the lap of the Buddha or lap of Tara Devi. It's another way, of getting protected. Okay.
Thank you very much, Geshe-la, for this beautiful advice. And Marina, she would like to further clarify about the Buddha and conceptual thinking. So does it mean, does the Buddha have conceptual thinking or not?
No. Because as I said, the mirrors don't have a conception. In other words, to make it simple, when you're completely purified, just like a pure mirror, then things come automatically. The obscurations are not there. So you don't have to. The main point is because there is no obstruction, no obscuration. He removed all the obscurations. Therefore, he is able to see everything effortlessly, spontaneously. Those of us who have not reached that state, we have to make effort, develop image, we have to imagine, we have to have conceptions about this and that, But in the case of the Buddha, things arise effortlessly. Now, this is not just fabrication, because the more you get used to something, like riding a bicycle. I did this practice when I was young. I wanted to ride bicycle, so I tried to ride on it. So in the beginning, you fall many times rather than being able to ride on it, because your mind is full of hesitation, doubt. Then gradually, when you are able to ride and on the bicycle properly, I never learned properly. So I'm not saying that I later learned properly. I never learned properly. But once you are really, skilled in riding a bicycle, then once you become expert, then while cycling, you can talk and you can look here and there. It comes automatically, more or less. So something like that. When you get fully trained, you do things effortlessly. So this is just a small example to show the direction.
Yes, Geshe-la, but still, does it mean that when you have a non-conceptual mind, is there good and evil? And if there is good and evil, how can you distinguish between them? Tell good from the evil without conceptions.
Yeah, true. There is a very famous statement where it says, the worldly people are debating, arguing with me, and I have no problem, no argument with the worldly people. I accept what worldly people are accepting. I'm not insane. That's what the Buddha said. So that is to say, what we say bad, Buddha also knows that this is what people say bad. What we say good, Buddha also knows this is what people say bad, good, or things like that. Right? So whatever is there, good, bad, whatever, he knows it simply. But that knowing something doesn't mean that he is bad or he has bad motivation or bad thinking or negative emotions. Negative emotions like trees and stones are only object of knowledge that he knows. But by that it is not necessary that he himself has anger or jealousy, things like that. He simply knows what is there. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Gisela, we just received one more question. Do we still have time for that, do you think?
Sure.
Okay, so it's a short one. Gisela, could you please explain or clarify the notion of suchness?
Suchness and emptiness are the same. Same meaning. So emptiness, I already explained. Emptiness is not nothingness, right? But empty of independent existence. So suchness is a different word. So suchness, thusness, thatness, emptiness, these are different words, but basically same meaning. It is as it is. It's almost saying something like that. Okay.